One has been a member of a pioneering art rock band for over 50 years. The other is a founder of an up-and-coming Australian band with classic rock sounds. Our guests this week are John Lodge of the Moody Blues and Martin Strange of Strange Karma on the VVN Music Podcast. Hi, and welcome to episode 37 of the VVN Music Podcast. I'm Roger Wink, and we're coming up on the second anniversary of our first episode from May of 2015. The VVN Music Podcast originally started as an occasional interview program in association with the news site VVNmusic.com, and starting this past February, we went to a weekly schedule. To celebrate our 2-year anniversary, we thought it would be interesting to look back at our very first interview with John Lodge of the Moody Blues. The Moody Blues are possibly the single biggest oversight of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, a pioneering band that developed the art rock style of combining groups with symphony orchestras. Their music led to the progressive rock of Yes, Emerson, Lake and Palmer, and King Crimson. In May of 2015, when we talked with John Lodge, he was releasing his first solo album in 38 years called 10,000 Light Years Away.
You know, it's been 38 years since your last solo album, and I think 35 since your last single. How did you make the decision to record solo again now?
I wanted to. I wanted to get back in the studio to record, a Moody Blues album. Really, but that wasn't sort of on the horizon. And I've been writing songs and getting ready, and I knew what album I wanted to write. And I'd written this song called 10,000 Light Years Ago, and I knew that should be the final track on the album, and I knew that was going to be the title of the album. And it just came about that I suddenly found a way of recording the album. I wanted to record as we'd recorded, really, as close as I could to the first albums of the Moody Blues, where we all sort of interacted with one another. And the last 10 years, I suppose, albums really are made in the control room, where everyone sits in the control room, and you're plugged into the control room, and you're not actually in the studio room itself with your own environment. And but the technical side of everything allowed me to do that, because everyone I worked with had their own studios. So we could all work together when everyone felt they were creative enough to work on the songs.
You like your work with the Moody Blues. The new album covers a wide range of styles, from rock with tracks like You Drive Me Crazy to early 20th century jazz, I Love Pass Me By. Is that something that you have always tried to do, or is it something that just comes about when you get into the writing, recording, and production process?
Well, the album really was work on a saying that I've been going through my head for some time now, that the future is always in reach, but the past has gone forever. And I was thinking, what actually does that mean? And I thought, well, it's about who I am. I want to write about an album, not retrospective at all, but an album about who I am today and what brought me here, what brought me to this place in time, and what were my influences. And so when I started to think about what has influenced my music over the years, all those different varieties, those genres, were a part of that influenced me. One of my first albums I ever bought was Django Reinhardt and Stefan Grappelli. And, I'm not a jazz person really at all, but that album must have influenced me. And I thought, and then a few years later, we were on tour in France, in Europe, and everything else, and we did a lot of concerts with Stefan Grappelli. And I thought that may have actually got into my being, and I thought, well, one day I'm going to write a song in that genre. And this album just appeared to be the exact album for it. And of course, I started with rock and roll, and You Drive Me Crazy is a rock and roll song. And then I got into, obviously, the type of music that I enjoy, like 10,000 Light Years Ago and In My Mind. And then Birmingham. So it was all part, the whole album really, is who I am today.
If I understand correctly, it does go back a little bit to your past, especially on those days in Birmingham, because that's more autobiographical.
Yeah,
correct?
it is, and it starts from the last verse really, because the last verse is standing on the side of the stage of another Moody Blues World Tour, and that is today, you know, and I'm looking at all this mounting of equipment that we've got, and sound system, light system, trucks and buses and planes. And then I sort of was standing there quietly, and then I sort of went back to where it all began for me in Eddie's Cafe in Birmingham, near the school where I was at, and playing a rock older jukebox.
How did you first get involved with the Moody Blues? You weren't the original bass player for the group, but you joined really fairly early in their existence, correct?
Yeah, I met Ray Thomas, the flautist in the Moody Blues, when I was 14, 15, and we formed a band together called El Riot and the Rebels, can you believe? And we actually wore Mexican outfits. In those days, everyone had to have a gimmick, I suppose. There was Nero and the Gladiators, and they dressed as Romans, and Johnny Kidd and the Pirates, they dressed as pirates. And Ray and I, we dressed as Mexicans, you know, even with sombreros. And for a short time, Mike Pinder, the mellotron player in the Moody Blues, he was with the band as well. And but I was still I was at college, and I was younger than everyone else. And Ray and the band made Go Now. And then about a year after that, Ray rang me up and said, "Have you finished college yet?" And I said, "Yeah, I've just finished." And he said, "Oh, shall we get back together and reform the band?" He didn't actually say really that we're going to continue with the Moody Blues. I wasn't too sure whether the name was going to change anyway. And so, but we got together. It was 1966, and we wrote Days of Future Past, and that was it really.
You mentioned both Ray Thomas and Mike Pinder. Now, I know that you convinced them to come back and work with you on this album. How did that come about?
Yeah, I'd written this song called Simply Magic. It's a song for my grandson, and when I was recording, making the demo, and I was playing the acoustic part, I suddenly realized that the instrumental I was playing on the acoustic guitar was a flute part. And Ray lives not far from me in England, and we were obviously still in contact with each other all the while. And I rang him up and said, "Ray, I've written this song for my grandson. Would you play flute?" And he said, "Yeah, of course." And so I went round to his house, played him the song, and then we went into the studio and recorded Ray's parts. And while we were doing that, he said, "Have you asked Mike? He'd be perfect on mellotron." So I rang Mike up in California and said, "Mike, I've written this song for my grandson. Would you come and play on it?" And he said, "Yeah, I'd love to." So it was easy as that, really. It was just wonderful because it really completed a circle for me, particularly on that song, you know, because Ray and Mike are integral parts of where I am today.
There have been a number of stories lately about how you would like to see both Mike and Ray come back into the Moody Blues for the 50th anniversary of Days of Future Past. Has there been any movement on that subject?
We haven't really. I mean, we're obviously talking about Days of Future Past, and Mike was at the concert last night in Santa Rosa, and it was really great to see him again, obviously, and it was wonderful. And but we didn't discuss that. We just talked about old times, and we talked about the concert, and we talked about life in general, you know. But no, I haven't really got to that at all. I mean, it'd be wonderful if we could find a way of doing Days of Future Past with the orchestra. But that's something I think within the next 6 months we'll be discussing, trying to find out a way of doing something nice.
That would be fantastic if you could make something like that happen. How are you are you planning on touring at all in support of the album?
Well, I think I always like to, when we released Days of Future Past in Search of Lost Chord, we hadn't thought about touring America at that time, and then with the success of those albums, the people asked us if we come and perform them. So it's the same attitude with this album for me, really. If the album is accepted and people would like to come and play it, yeah, I'd love to, because it's always really nice to play new songs on stage, especially if an audience has just heard them for the first time. It's always really special to see what the reaction is, and to see if we're all on the same emotional level, really.
Who else is on the album with you? Did you bring in studio people or musicians that might be able to go on the road with you, should you decide to do so?
Well, I got a core of musicians. Chris Spedding from England, guitar player, who was always with Roxy Music, and Gordon Marshall, our drummer, Alan Hewitt, who co-produced the album with me and also co-written a couple of songs with me on the album. Alan is a wonderful keyboard player, brilliant. And of course myself. And then we brought a couple of other people in, a couple of other guitarists as we was getting closer to finishing the album. I brought a violinist in called Mike Piggott, who played on the Love Passed Me By, the Stefan Grappelli, because he's a real Stefan Grappelli type person. And then another guitarist from Naples. Everything else, just we brought people in to put all the final touches on everything,
I understand that Chris Spedding also played on your first solo album back in, I guess it was 1977. I take it that he just kind of fits your style.
Yeah, well, we both come up from probably from the same place, from rock and roll, and when you say to Chris, in all the guitar greats like Scotty Moore and Cliff Gallup, he knows all these guitar riffs, he knows how they played them all. And so, when I was mentioning it would be great to have sort of a Cliff Gallup type guitar on You Drive Me Crazy or something, Chris knew exactly what I was on about.
One of the great oversights of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is that the Moody Blues are not members. I mean, when the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame started, it was to honor those who have influenced other musicians and particular style, and it's just wrong that the Moody Blues are not in. Is this something that kind of, I don't want to say weighs on your mind, but that you think about at all?
It obviously comes up in interviews really all the while. It doesn't. I don't really think about it when it's not an interview. But I have no idea that. I mean, they have obviously their own agenda, and that's it really. I don't. A river flows and you can't really stop it. So whatever. I can't really. I can't devote any really attention to it. But I think from the fans' point of view, it must be really frustrating, because I know if I was a fan of the Moody Blues, I'd probably really be frustrated.
Well, without what the Moody Blues did, starting in 1966 and bringing in much more sophisticated music and orchestral arrangements and so forth, it forged the way for groups like Yes, Emerson, Lake and Palmer and so forth. And if that doesn't define influence, I don't know what does.
Yeah, I don't know, perhaps we don't fit into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame model. I don't know.
What's next for the Moody Blues? I know that you tour an awful lot during the year. Is there any plans at all for another album?
Not at the moment. We're thinking about, obviously, next year, the 50th anniversary of Days of Future Past, and we're thinking about a lot of things. But, we're touring at the moment. We're doing a British tour next, and then we're doing Glastonbury in the UK, a festival. And then, of course, we've got the Timeless. Universal Records have released the Timeless Flight album with, the Polydor years. And so that's where we are at the moment. I think to make a new album, it's not just the Moody Blues who need the you need a huge support system, and you need sort of record companies. There's nothing worse than sitting down writing a song 3 o'clock in the morning, thinking to yourself, I wonder if anyone's ever going to hear this.
Have you found yourself getting involved at all, or the band getting involved in social media because of the way that contacting the fans has changed so much in the recent years?
Yeah, I mean, the way contacting everyone has changed enormously, and that I'm really fortunate. My son, Christian, runs my website, and he runs all the Facebook part of everything that we do, and so he's always chasing me up for different things, and so he runs all that. He knows how important the social media is, to get your album out, and especially now it's really interesting because my interest really, of course, is that the album is out on 180 gram vinyl. That is, to me, is the most important thing, because I spent a long time with the artist Phil Smee, and we spent a couple of months trying to get the artwork right. It's because of the cover. I thought the cover is really important, and the inside of the cover, and that's the type that you need to try and get over, I think, on the social media network, that it's not just about the music, it's not just about the download, it's about the whole tactility, if that is a word, of holding an album, listening to it, and reading what the artist has tried to put into the artwork as well.
And luckily, we're in an age right now, which is fairly new, where vinyl is starting to come back in people's interest.
It really is. I mean, that's what really got me excited, because, for me, music always has been, is about sharing. And when you download, I mean, you put the earbuds in, you're the only person sharing to yourself. And but when you're playing vinyl, it's just really nice. And I noticed now you can buy all these great portable turntables and wander around with them and play everybody your music, and did what we did before, turn everybody onto an album that you really love.
Speaking of turning people on to an album, I always like to ask artists if there are any new and upcoming musicians that you are particularly impressed with.
To be honest, I just listen to everything, and I think I could name a lot of different new people, but then that sort of puts me in where I'm looking at a new artist. But I think most of my music comes from not what I've got, but what I've learned to listen to, which I enjoy playing. And so it's always the people that have turned me on originally that still turn me on today, like Dave Gilmour, or that type of thing, So I'm always interested, Eric Clapton, always interested in listening to what they're doing today.
Well, John, thank you very much for talking to us. I wish you the very best of luck with the new album.
Thank you, Roger. Thank you very much, and thanks for the interview, and thanks for the support.
VVN Music is dedicated to what we call veteran artists, those who have been recording for 20 years or more. However, we occasionally put the spotlight on a newer artist whose style preserves the classic sounds of the past. Those artists have included James Hunter, Joss Stone, Duffy, Mayer Hawthorne, and the Explorers Club. Strange Karma is an Australian band that is described as combining the powerhouse rock of Led Zeppelin with a pomposity reminiscent of Queen. Led by brothers Martin and Paul Strange, they started in the Sydney area and have toured Australia, the UK, and America. In 2011, they released their first album and followed last year with the LP Cold Blooded, which they have chosen to release only on vinyl. I talked to Martin Strange from Sydney, Australia. One of the things I read just recently, and I won't make you think of these again, I actually wrote them down, was you were asked what your 5 most influential albums were. And you mentioned Abbey Road by the Beatles, Led Zeppelin 4.
Yeah.
in Rock by Deep Purple, Night at the Opera Queen, and Electric Ladyland Hendrix. And that shows very much a influence of classic rock. And by the way, congratulations on naming Abbey Road in there. I've always thought that so far outpaced Sgt. Pepper that I never understood the love for Sgt. Pepper.
Right, yeah, it's a little bit weird there, that record. I understand where you're coming from. But yeah, those records are great. I mean, I just named a few, top of my head, really. You know, there's a lot more, that you can go on and on. But, like, for example, the Queen one, the opera, I mean, gave us Bohemian Rhapsody, and Zeppelin 4 gave us Stairway to Heaven. I mean, the most significant rock songs of all time. So I thought I'd put those in.
You first got the idea of going professional after, if I understand correctly, after doing karaoke in New York City. I would have to think that was the early 1990s.
Yeah, it wasn't really a karaoke. I mean, there were a couple of moments in New York. I mean, I went to New York when I finished school, and just to find myself and just to gain experience and just to see what's out there, you know. Spent some time in LA as well. And, I hung out with a local artist in Hell's Kitchen. His name was Douglas Kelly. I don't know if you would ever listen to this podcast or not, but he was in a band in the 70s and stuff like that. And, you know, the city itself has definitely influenced me a lot as a young guy. And I spent time with a bunch of university students hanging out at Greenwich Village in Cafe Wa. You know, watching amazing musicians play, and I just had goosebumps, you know, and music was definitely the calling. Sure, I got drunk and sang, you know, Zeppelin tunes on top of my lungs in a bar and stuff like that, and you know, I might have a voice there. You know, and then made my decision really, and went back home to Sydney and got my brother involved and then we started songwriting and then started doing duos and then, you know, we went to the UK for a few years. We wanted to get that experience and hit the road and just throw ourselves into the fire. And we did many times. Then we came back, all broken up and we formed Strange Camel, found Jason and with Jay we just constantly played in Sydney as much as we could, and then went to America. You know, new relationships were formed and went to the United States. We spent 3-4 months there. We played in Las Vegas, all over the place, and Los Angeles as well. Then we came back. We recorded an album to get a career started so we can get, you know, the blueprint, if you like, going. And then after that, we went to tour United States. We did a quick tour of United States from LA to New York and back. And we met David Ivory as a producer, and then we recorded this album. So it's a long, long story. Very trying, long, but legitimate journey.
Talking about paying your dues, I understand that when you were first starting out, you and your brother used to play in, I would assume, clubs in the red light district in Sydney.
Yeah, we did. Paul is like 6 years younger than me. So, you know, I was doing my thing, finding myself, and he was still in school. And when I got back, he was like 16, and he was playing King's Cross, which is red light district, and that's where we started, you know, forging our songs and playing songs like Crying for Your Love, for example, was one of my first piano songs that I was able to put left and right hand together and sing, and Paul collaborated with the guitar. And we played that song, you know, King's Cross, you know, way back. And it made on this record after all these years, you know. So it just shows you that, you know, if you have a good idea in your youth, keep it and work at it and play it. Don't just, you know, brush it under the table or whatever. Just have it. And you never know, you might make it on an album.
You know, you yourself, I think it started with the media, but you yourself have described your sound as combining the powerhouse rock elements of Led Zeppelin with the flair and pomposity of Queen. Was that by design, or is that just from the influences? It's how it came about?
I think influences, of course, had something to do with it. Of course, it does. I mean, you listen to good music, something will come out of that subconsciously. You're gonna start to produce something like that. But I don't know. I think diversity, maybe. I mean, those two bands were very diverse in the music. Maybe that's what people are talking about. I think maybe that's what it is. I don't know. Can't put my finger on it, but there are elements on this record that may sound a little bit like that.
Now, you and your brother both play guitar, and I know you've had others in the band, but your drummer now is Jason McDonald. How did you hook up with him?
When we got back from the UK, from a first stint of hard work, hard yakka, we call it here, we were pretty much, devastated, and Paul and I made a decision to keep going, and we needed a great rhythm section, or at least a good drummer. And we placed an ad in the paper, and Jason phoned back, and we met up with Jay, and we got talking, and he listened to our songs, and we listened to his drumming, and we just had a really good relationship. We just formed a really good relationship and a good understanding. And Jay was in 100% like a brother, and we just held it together for all these years, just holding on to this whole thing and just building a bit, chipping away, bit by bit, and that's how it all, that's how the band came about.
You mentioned, I think it was in 2010, that you came over to the United States, and I know that you were kind of playing up and down the Sunset Strip for a while in Los Angeles. Did you find that American audiences were receptive in any different way to your music?
Yeah. Look, American audience is awesome. When we arrived in Las Vegas, we played Cheyenne Saloon, which was like a place to play in Las Vegas. We kicked it off there, and very warm response. I mean, we didn't have anything recorded back then. We just went out there just to see that response, just to get that feeling, and getting the media too a little bit. And I think my brother and Jason were calling up a few people, and they got hold of Sally Steele from Vegas Rocks magazine, and she was starting that magazine back then. It was brand new. She was delivering that by hand, from club to club. And she came to see us, and, she was kind of blown away by the music and the raw energy. And people were too, because it was kind of that Zeppelin swagger, that we kind of had at that time, and brought that sort of 70s, riffing rock with wild vocals, and people loved it. And you know that in the United States, Zeppelin is really renowned. I mean, they play that stuff on the radio non-stop. So I think it was really, really cool. And then we jumped in cars and we did the whole thing and went to Los Angeles, back and forth on 15, up and down the highway for like 3-4 months. And yeah, we did play the whiskey quite a bit, and we got really warm response, and people started hearing about us and started coming, and then we got rebooked constantly, because I think we played like 3 or 4 times on the first visit, because they loved the band.
I'm a little bit confused as to when you originally released your album Volume 1, because I've seen a date as early as 2011. Was it that early?
Yeah, it was that early. We hooked up with a label. We tried to hook up with the label, but the label wasn't doing anything, so that relationship has ended, and we basically re-released it in 2000.
I think it was 2014. I saw for when you released it as America.
So correct. Yeah. So that's what happened. I mean, the very early days before around the first record, I mean, we were going through absolutely hell, meeting people that were not the right people. You can imagine all the time wasted and money and everything else. So it was a very, it was a lesson for sure.
How was it working with David Ivory? Because I know that he's done a lot of work with groups like Hailstorm and people like that. Did you get along well with him?
Very much so. I think David is a cat. I think he's got a great personality. He's got great instinct as a producer. He's a great timekeeper. He's got great ideas. And he works really, really quickly and efficiently. I mean, we cut this record pretty much in 3 weeks with pre-production and looking for a place to stay at all at the same time. So we did really, really well. And yeah, we like David. David is really, really cool. Really, really nice guy.
So here's the big question on the album. Why did you decide to go with just a vinyl release?
Well, first of all, to get feedback, to see what's going on. We can't afford to give music away. I mean, giving music away is killing yourself in every respect. Vinyl is doing really well. People are starting to buy it. I think people are a little bit sick and tired of listening to music in passing, because listening to music in passing is just not really listening. And I think vinyl is coming back. It's a good thing. It's a good thing for business.
It's doing amazingly in the United States. I mean,
yeah,
it's almost equaling CDs as far as revenue at this point. So it is doing amazingly well.
Yeah, I went to the store the other day and I saw 20, 21-year-olds buying vinyl, and I just started asking questions and started saying, "So hi guys, and how's it going?" And you guys are buying vinyl. How big is it on your college campus? And they said, look, it's growing, it's big, So it's good. It's the way to go. Going backwards is going forward for sure.
Well, I know that in stores here in the United States, like Barnes and Noble, I don't know if you have those in Australia, but they have huge sections of vinyl now.
And it's awesome to go into a vinyl store and see the new Beatles or all the bands that you liked have brand new packaging and people are buying it. It's great. It's a great feeling. And listening to it is just a great experience. Be able to sit down, not skip anything, and just listen and hear what's actually on the thing.
From my experience also, the vinyl is of such higher weight and quality now that I think it adds to the excellent sound. I mean, I remember back in the 70s that RCA had this, I can't ever remember the name of the special production they had, but it was like ultra thin vinyl, and it's like, that's cost cutting. That's not a feature, But the new vinyl, especially like your album, I mean, it's pressed on a very heavy vinyl, and I think that goes a long way too with preserving and the sound.
Oh, absolutely. And the way David mixed it and everything else, the music, although it's classic rock orientated, it's still fresh as well. So yeah, like you said, quality vinyl. It matters where it's pressed, where the vinyl is actually pressed. So we pressed it in a good plant, and absolutely quality 100%.
I assume then from what you said before that you aren't really interested in things like either digital download, which I know compromises the sound quite a bit, or in streaming services like a Spotify or something like that.
Yeah, I'm not really a fan of it. Because I mean, the band is not making money. There is no other record. There is no touring. There is nothing. I mean, to produce a good record, it costs money, and bands need all the support they can get. And if you're going to be just, streaming and listening that way in passing, it's the industry is not going to revive itself. It's very important to go back. It really is, because if we want good music and we want good bands that will entertain us in the future, then we need to pay for it. Otherwise, you will you've got laptops and that's it.
I also think, at least here in the United States, I believe that the album is only available through your website. Is there any plans to expand out and try and get it into independent record stores and things?
Absolutely. We're talking right now with independent record stores and everything else for promotion. So the whole thing, where we are at right now is finding out how this record is received. It's getting positive response from the media and DJs and everything else. And we are hoping to get it into stores for sure in the United States, Australia, Japan, Germany, UK. So, yeah.
I've read interviews with you and so forth where that you feel that this is a album is a great cross-section of everything that Strange Karma is about musically.
Mm-hmm. I think what I'm talking about there is diversity. When you come to see a Strange Karma gig, one song, the show is not going to sound the same. Every song is going to be different. I mean, I would play the piano, and then jump on the guitar, do an acoustic, or I would just front the band with this strong riffing song like Devil from the Moon, for example. So there's a lot of diversity in the show and also on the record.
When you tour, do you take along any additional players? You don't have a bass player or anything when you tour?
We do, absolutely. We would have a session guy who would do it. We've got several session guys to choose from, but we're working with a young prospect right now, and the band's sounding really, really good in the studio, and we have a couple of shows lined up, warm-up shows that we're going to be doing here in Sydney. So yeah, definitely bass player is needed for sure.
What are the plans as far as touring, not only Australia, but also the UK, where I know you're popular, and the US? My initial impression was that in the US you were mainly New York, Los Angeles, Las Vegas, but it sounds like you did do some traveling to some of the other areas of the country.
Yeah, we did Chicago, we did Texas. So yeah, we did a bit of this and a bit of that. I mean, look, everything was a learning experience for us, even the UK thing. So, we're hoping that this record is going to be received really, really well, and we'll be able to do a proper tour together and really, get the fans this time around.
Strange Karma's album, Cold Blooded, is available now only on vinyl at the band's website. We'll be back next week with another edition of the VVN Music Podcast. Remember that you can hear the VVN Music Podcast via iHeartRadio, YouTube, iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, Libsyn, and the VVN Music website. For the latest news on the veteran artists of rock, pop, soul, country, folk, and blues, go to vvnmusic.com. If you have any comments or questions about the website or this podcast, please send them to vvnnetwork@gmail.com. Our theme music is performed by Yahar. This program was released on April 17th, 2017. The VVN Music Podcast is a production of the VVN Network, copyright 2017.